Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Nico, this is Niko's Book Reviews, and in this video I am going to be talking about none other than Valor, the second book in the Faithful and Fallen series by Gwynne. And let me tell you, Valor is a pretty fantastic book. And I read not too long ago Malice, and it was my first time through, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good book, but there was a lot of setup, a lot of kind of tropey type things that were happening, and it just seemed pretty predictable, nothing all that surprising, some kind of new authorisms where things were just explained maybe a little bit clumsily, but it was still really well done, and the pacing of these books, like I said in the review for Malice, really kept me from getting annoyed, because if I didn't like a chapter, most of them are like 6-7 pages long, then I'm done and on to the next viewpoint. So it really makes them pretty easy to get through, even though they're decently long books. Now, Valor took everything that Malice set up and just ran with it. We had very little time spent really needing to explain anything or set anything up. Malice pretty well set us everything in motion that was going to be happening, and this book really started to bring those plot lines to life in a big way. I do want to note here that this video will be spoiler free for Valor, but it will have pretty big spoilers for Malice, because Malice, like I said, was the setup book, so talking about kind of the plots that are even happening, it's inherently going to be filled with spoilers. So just be aware, if you've not watched Malice, you should not be watching this video. Go watch my Malice review, and that one's fine, or check out a different one, but don't watch this one if you haven't read Malice quite yet. With that, though, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this book. And the first thing I want to mention is Corbin, because I mentioned I wasn't a huge fan of Corbin in the first book. His story had a lot of tropes, the kind of the coming of age warrior type story, and that was kept up a little bit with finding out that he's the chosen one, which was a little bit hinted. But in book 2, we really are looking at that a lot less. It kind of branches into new territory. But I really liked the way that Gwynne approached his character of the person who does find out that they're apparently the chosen one, and kind of just makes it really fit the character that had been set up, in not just immediately going the route of like Nathair, our bad chosen one, who still thinks that he's the good chosen one. As at this point, we see him go a very different reaction to thinking he's chosen, which makes sense for his character. And Corbin really doesn't necessarily believe it, but is just really trying to do what's best. And so I liked the way that his character was treated. I still love Veratus a lot as well. But the one thing that surprised me, because I kind of expected it to be undone in this book, and it wasn't, is that Castel's death in book 1 stuck. He really was dead. And I was a bit surprised. I've been told that there may be more coming in the future as well. And I mean, there are some deaths that you will see in Valor as well, which of course I'm not going to tell you who. That would be spoilers. But I was surprised with Castel dead, but that actually really let Macon shine, who I thought was the stronger character, which in retrospect was probably intentional, since Macon was going to be sticking around a little bit longer. But so I really enjoyed getting to see these characters go down their own pathways, and Macon dealing with the fact that he failed Castel, and how he's going to go on, and that's his main motivation. Corbin just kind of trying to figure out what to do, while him and the rest of the group with him and Donna are being hunted by Ren, who's trying to take over more and more kingdoms. The whole while Nathair, who's kind of being directed by Calidus, who came from with the group from Lycos, and the group from Lycos getting more involved quite a bit as well. We have a lot of this starting to really come together in some interesting ways. One other thing I really enjoy about Valor is that Valor actually gives us some POVs from a giant, and we really get to learn more about the giants, because that was something I kind of didn't like as much in Malice, is they were there and it seemed important that we knew certain things about them, but they were just kind of like the faceless enemies, and that is very much remedied. We get to really see where they fall in on all of this, and kind of see that they're also, people for all intents and purposes as well. And, you know, some of them lean one way, some another. So getting to see all of that intertwine for the ending, really, really, really good job. There were still a few, you know, things here and there that annoyed me a little bit. We did literally have the "I want to tell you how I feel, but oh no, something happened" trope, which always annoys me a little bit. But I actually didn't mind the bits of romance that were in Valor that were sprinkled in as much, because it definitely wasn't the focus. There was some that was there, and it was also some that made sense for the characters in the way that it was done. It wasn't really like a plot line. It's more so like most things in the Faithful and the Fallen so far as I've seen, we're just seeing what's actually happening, and it's still moving at a very quick pace. Now, I thought Malice was really fast-paced, even in the, I guess, quote-unquote, slower parts, and that was part of the reason I didn't mind a lot of the setup. I have heard some people complain that it's just they felt like nothing was happening for large stretches. You will not get that with Valor. Valor pretty much starts and then is rising action almost the entire time. There is so much going on. Some of it is still a bit predictable, and that's what I want to address, because I did comment in my Malice review that I saw most of it coming. There were quite a lot of things that I definitely saw coming in Valor as well, but Gwynne, instead of just trying to hide something from you, if it might be predictable, he'll kind of tell you. It's the writing itself is kind of, you definitely see where it's going, so it's less of the, oh gee, yeah, we didn't see that coming, when a writer like really poorly tries to pull something over on you. He doesn't, you know, ever like lie to you or try to mislead you. You kind of get where it's going, and I think that is a strength, even though it can make things a little bit predictable that were maybe supposed to be surprises. There are definitely a few things here and there that are surprising, that you aren't expecting to see as well, so I'm not saying that they're not, but he writes in a way that makes even the predictable aspects enjoyable, because with Gwynne, it's more about going there, I guess, or to use a Stormlight metaphor, journey before destination. It's really just going, and in his writing, and the kind of the fast-paced feel like you're just kind of jumping down in with all of these characters, that's really, really enjoyable. And so I really enjoyed that as well. One other character I do want to specifically highlight is Simon, because Simon didn't feel like she was particularly important in the first book. She had a solid amount of POVs. She wasn't one of the main characters, but we really expanded her role quite a bit, and I thought that was interesting because her character was just kind of there along with some others. Once again, I definitely understand why Gwynne did that. He wanted to make sure that these characters existed and that we knew enough about them that when they became more important later, we would understand their motivations. So this was the case with several of the kind of side characters. We get to see them a lot more. More than anything, with non-POV characters, I think that's actually one of the places that Gwynne shines the most, which is a weird thing to say, I know, but let me explain. So, with the way that he writes, he's extremely good at having you see things as they're happening and not having them seem forced. What I mean by that is you'll sometimes have a POV from a character where they're not really doing or saying anything, they're just around what's going on. And because of that, you actually learn so much about other characters, some that we do get POVs for, some that we don't, from how other people see them. And that's such an interesting way to write it, and it's not something you see with a ton of other writers. Usually when you're writing the POV, and I'll take a book, looking at, say, Joe Abercrombie, who's, you know, one of the best, arguably the best character writer. He really, the way he writes, everything shifts when he's writing a character so that you completely see everything through their lens. So that really lets you know that character really well, but less about the other characters. Even if they're talking about another character, you're just really learning more about the character being written. With Faithful and the Fallen, the characters are really, really well done, and they very much are, but you actually learn more about them from their interactions with people, how other people see them, and you might have an interaction that if you were looking at their POV, they might see it differently, so instead we're going to see it through somebody else's eyes and kind of get this more objective view, or maybe subjective, but in a just different way. And that was something I found just so interesting, way that I felt like I knew some of the side characters that were less important as well. But really, it was just enjoyable learning more about it, and the way he uses the different POVs to have us learn about the world. I think it's a great job with that, so that we don't have to have exposition dumps, we don't have to have characters explain their motivations, we just see them organically as they come. So really, really great job with that. The action scenes also are extremely good. And there were some, I commented to some more like cliche action scenes in the first one as well. We still get maybe a little bit of that here and there, but honestly, it's just so enjoyable that I feel like I would have overlooked it. And I still have to say, my biggest complaint about this series, and this really isn't necessarily a complaint per se, but the thing that's actually like pushing me, just that you're keeping me from being kind of just like pushed over the top. I wish this series or like the books were like twice as long. I really enjoy the in-depth, the wordy prose. Obviously, I like my really long books. I know some people hate that. And that's why I think this is, if you're the reader who just, long books intimidate you, or you just you're like a get to the point, I don't want all this unnecessary description. Faithful to the Fallen John Gwynne, that is for you, because he really does not mince words. Things are happening. Even in Malice, the setup book, he accomplished in 600 pages what felt like 1,200 pages of content. And the same thing in Valor. There is so much happening. The first two books could have already been pretty much like 3 or 4 books, without a dip in quality, just with a complete change in style. And that is just, I've heard it continues to keep up like that as well, so definitely looking forward to that. But his writing style of just getting it done so quickly, it doesn't technically mesh with me. I'm still enjoying the heck out of these books. Also, they were really nice when you are reading a lot of the more dense prose type books, or the books that are very long, and so using this as kind of like a breather in between was really nice as well, because even though each book is, at least around 600 pages, they read like a 300-page book, and they have the content of like a 1,200-page book, and it's just an interesting reading experience. I've never read anything that hit quite like Faithful and the Fallen does, so definitely very enjoyable there as well. So those are really my main thoughts here, just talking about how the characters and the plot, the things that really improved a lot from the first book. The first book did feel like that kind of stepping stone, that intro book, and it was. And I think it accomplished that and allowed Gwynne to really do what he wanted to do here. And even though I haven't finished the series yet, this is making me really curious to read his other books, because this is a pretty strong start. There were definitely, I could tell he was a newer author from some of the things in Malice. A lot of that really went away in Valor already, just with book 2. Really, really in his element, and I am excited to read more of his work. I will absolutely be reading more of his work as well. I'm excited to continue the books, see more of the world, see more of these big plots intertwine, and the way book 2 ends definitely sets up for some really, really raised stakes in book 3. Wrath, and I've heard apparently you're supposed to read Wrath and Ruin basically back to back because you're going to want to. So I am going to try to get to those here pretty soon. One other thing I wanted to note, something I also really enjoyed about the way that he wrote and the kind of the complex characters, is we get, I wouldn't say as much of kind of the morally gray as you get in a lot of grimdark. This definitely is not grimdark, but you have characters that are pretty complex in their motivations. Macon definitely being one, where we kind of know his motivations, but his plotline really gets you through. But I did really enjoy it a lot, especially with Veratus, who was one of my favorite characters in the first one, because he's like a really good guy who's just trying to do what's right and ends up kind of involved with the wrong people, and with Nether, who I hate, like most people probably do, but he's still just trying to be loyal and be a good friend to Nether, and do what he thinks he's supposed to do. But kind of his introspection is really the other side. The people who are in this battle, who really, they don't have any stakes, their lives are being lost for sometimes petty things, and kind of that look of, you know, is this really right? Is this worth it? And that look of, you know, the normal people in a war and a conflict. And that's always something I think is interesting to explore. You do get that in some other things as well. Other authors have done that. It's not like it's a brand new thing, but I like that look, and it just fleshes out a character more. Because even him, who is pretty blindly following somebody, he's doing it, and he thinks he has, you know, absolute proof that he's on the right side, and even then just isn't sure. And you get that, you know, things are not always black and white, and ironically I say that when Faithful and the Fallen is pretty much a good versus evil story. So since it's a pretty much, you know, one-to-one good versus evil story, that's also what makes having the character who's technically on the wrong side, not sure what's really going on here. And it's also part of the theme that I really enjoyed, where Gwynne will basically like tell you that, yep, you know, you have your good chosen one, your bad chosen one, and then he'll keep throwing things at you to just almost make you think like, am I being tricked here? You know, every time we see a prophecy, it's always vague enough that it could apply to either one, and each side always thinks it applies to the other. And I just love the little seeds of doubt, because like, you know what the answer is, but he also is just kind of like, I could just pull the rug out from under you. And, you know, you don't, at least at the point I'm at, you don't really get that pull the rug out moment, but I like the way it's written too. And also it's, you know, the bad guy's not going to necessarily see themselves as the bad guy. They think they're the good guy. And so, of course, any of these negative things are going to attribute to the other one. And it's just a very real way to look at it. And it makes, once again, the characters just seem more lifelike and more real. But those are, yeah, I know that was kind of just a jumble, but that's really my reaction to Valor. This was a great book. My initial thought when I finished it was just, wow. I enjoyed this a lot. Tons of action, great pacing, easy to get through even for a longer book. And if you didn't hate the first book, even if you read it and you weren't a huge fan, I would definitely recommend giving this a try. Because it just was so enjoyable and has me so excited for the rest of the series. Even though I was a little bit more lukewarm on book one, this really took everything that I had issues with and just ran and went it and showed why that was necessary. Because if Malice would not have set everything up and kind of taken those baby steps where they were needed, Valor wouldn't have been able to be Valor, and that would be a shame. So I'm glad that it did what it needed to do and accomplish. So with that, that is my review of Valor by John Gwynne, Book 2 in the Faithful and the Fallen. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment, let me know your thoughts on this, and don't forget, of course, to subscribe if you want to see more of my content.